Hey guys, Cassie here. Welcome back to my channel, and today we are doing the Netflix Originals tag. Now this is different from the Netflix tag, which I've already done. And this tag was created by someone named Kaiten, I believe is how you say her name, and her channel is called Chapter 8. I will link her video down below in the description as usual. So thank you to Kaiten for all the wonderful questions. There are 10 questions to this tag, so let's get started. Question number 1 is Orange is the New Black. Name a book where the main character is imprisoned. So I'm really surprised to be saying this because I love movies and shows that are about like prison, and I'm shocked to say that I don't think I've ever read a book where the main character was imprisoned. I could not think of anything. So I'm gonna go ahead and say my book, Broken Together. This book has not come out yet. I'm still currently writing it. My debut novel, Keep No Record, was the first book in this series. It's gonna be 2 books, and Broken Together is the second one. Nobody's technically imprisoned in Keep No Record, and technically there's not much time in Broken Together in which the main character is imprisoned, but technically he is imprisoned for like a few pages, so that counts, I guess. There is a lot of reference to him being imprisoned, but the story doesn't take place while he's currently incarcerated, if that makes sense. I know I'm just starting this tag off super well with totally cheating and making up something that doesn't really even apply, but I couldn't think of a good answer for that question. So moving on. Question number 2 is Sense8. Name a favorite platonic relationship in a book. I don't know why I said platonic, but whatever. And yet again, I'm gonna cheat a little bit because I'm sure there are plenty of platonic relationships in books that I enjoy, but I just couldn't not mention this one, and it doesn't quite count, but let me explain. I'm gonna say Zach and Alex in 13 Reasons Why. Now, the reason this is sort of cheating is because Zach and Alex are characters in the book 13 Reasons Why, but they don't really have a relationship at all in this book. But they do have a very, very great, awesome friendship in the TV show 13 Reasons Why in season 2. And when I talk about platonic relationships in characters, like, I can't not mention Zach and Alex because it's one of my favorite examples of just the best bromance ever. I love it so much. They're so just supportive of each other, and they talk about really deep stuff and stuff that's like really hard and kind of embarrassing to talk about, but they don't make a big deal of it, and they don't like shy away from their emotions, and it's just like such a beautiful picture of what I wish more men had in their lives. And a lot of men do have that in their lives, but it's not really portrayed very much on screen or in books. So I was really, really happy about that relationship in the TV show, so I just had to mention it for this question. And technically they are book characters, okay? They're just not the same really in the book as they are in the show. Question number 3 is House of Cards. Name a book with political overtones. For that, I'm going to say The Selection by Kiera Cass. I was so pleasantly surprised by the political overtones in this series. I had no idea it was going to be about that. This book was presented to me as a fun, you know, kind of silly romance that's sort of like The Bachelor with royalty. So that's all I was expecting it to be, and it was so much more than that. There was a lot of political overtones in this book, and that was my favorite part of the book, which is surprising because I really love romance, and I loved the romance in the book, but for me, the political, like, overall plot of like all of the taking over the government and the class systems rebelling, and this girl from a lower class potentially becoming queen, and how she was gonna, you know, lead the rebellion. I don't know, I'm struggling with my words, but basically all of that part of this series was my favorite part, and it's what made me love the series so much, and I can't wait to read it again now that I kind of know what to expect more, and I might pay more attention to certain subplot areas than I did the first time around. Question number 4 is Bojack Horseman, I think. I've never heard of that, so I think I'm saying that right. But anyway, this question is name a book that made you laugh. And for that, I have to say Royals. I love this book so much. I answered the same question in the Netflix tag video, so forgive me for repeating myself, but I really adored the main character, Daisy Winters, in this book. She's super hilarious and snarky and sarcastic, and I was cracking up out loud so many times just at her commentary and her own thoughts throughout the story, and it was so much fun because I'm not really used to reading books with main characters that have that kind of personality. Usually the books I read, the like teen romances I read, the love interest is usually the one who has that kind of vibrant personality, and the MC is usually the one who's kind of quiet and reserved. But in Royals, it's the opposite. Her love interest is the quiet, reserved one, and she's the one who's spunky and full of life and interest, and I just super loved reading this book. Number 5 is Dear White People. Name a book which features a character whose race or ethnicity is different from your own. Obviously, there's tons of books I could say for this, but since the one I'm about to use for the next question was the first one that came to mind, but I'm gonna use it for that question. So for this one, I'm gonna say To All the Boys I Loved Before, because I just got finished reading P.S. I Still Love You. I hate that series, as many of you probably know, but Lara Jean and her family are Korean, and I'm not. So there we go. Question number 6 is Stranger Things. Name a book with an admirable mother or mother figure. Now, this is why I didn't use this book for the previous question, because it had to be for this one, and that would be The Hate U Give. I just absolutely adored the relationship between Star and her mother. I think both of her parents, honestly, are so great, and I just couldn't get enough of their relationship. I thought it was really, really awesome to see. We don't see a lot of teen books that even have parental figures at all, let alone have two parents who are still married and in love. And not only still married, but like her dad cheated on her mom with a prostitute, I think, and had another child with them, and they're still together and going strong. And that just is so beautiful, I think, and such a positive message to portray in a novel. And I really, really loved the relationship between Star and her parents, and how big of a role they played in this story, because obviously Star's going through some really, really crazy, horrible stuff in this book, and I love that she had those parental figures to support her through all of that. It was really great to see, and kind of a rare thing to see, and I loved it. Question number 7 is Glow. Name a book that left you feeling empowered. For this, I had to say The 49th Mystic by Ted Dekker. Oh my gosh, you guys, this book is incredible. It seriously blew my mind. I don't even really know how to begin to sum up the plot. It is a Christian novel. It's very heavily laden with Christian stuff. So if you're not a Christian, you might not really be as into it as I was, but oh my gosh, it's so good. So basically it's about a young girl who's sort of discovering that, gosh, it's really hard to explain. She's discovering the existence of another world, the other world being sort of the spiritual realm that exists in our world with God and Jesus and the devil and demons and angels and all that jazz. Anyway, and it's just a crazy story. She's blind, and at various points in the story, she's not blind, and then she becomes blind again, and it's basically just about her learning how to see the world differently and kind of opening her eyes both literally and metaphorically to seeing the world in a completely different way than she did before. And I felt like my perspective of our world was totally changed after this, and I became a lot more like heaven-minded, and it just, yeah, I definitely felt very, I guess empowered is a good word, after reading this book, to just see the world differently, to see people differently. There's a character, I'm trying not to say too much because my husband's in the other room and I don't know if he can hear me, and I don't want to spoil it for him because he's reading this series. But there's a character who is sort of supposed to be, I guess I'm trying to think of like an equivalent example that people who aren't Christians would understand. I guess just basically there's a character who's supposed to be sort of an enemy of the main character. It's kind of like through a lot of the story, it's basically as if a Christian person was navigating the world with an atheist person, and their relationship with each other is just really, really interesting, and the way that she views him, and throughout the process of opening her eyes to like the spiritual realm, and the way like God, they don't call him God really in this book, but the way God sees people, throughout the process of her opening her eyes to that, the way that she views her friend who is, has very different beliefs than she does, and is also not just like different religious beliefs, but it's like there's a war going on and he's literally like the enemy of her people, and her people actually kind of see him as like, it's almost sort of a racist way that they view him. It's really hard to explain because it's so like fantasy based, so it's hard to explain. But basically, I just felt really empowered by thinking a lot about the way that she viewed this man who she's kind of supposed to see a certain way, but her eyes are open to how like God sees people, so she's not seeing him the way that her other fellow humans are like expecting her to view him, and she views him with a lot more compassion and love and understanding, and not just like tolerating him being different than her, but like valuing and appreciating the way that he is different than her. And I don't know, I'm doing a terrible job of explaining this, so I'm gonna stop, but it's a really, really good book. I felt very empowered after reading it. It definitely changed my perspective in so many ways. Question number 8 is The Defenders. Name a book with more than 2 main characters. I really honestly couldn't think of the best example for this, so I went with The Girl on the Train. I think it kind of applies because there are 3 main, like, what do you call it? POVs. There are 3 POVs in this story. We have Rachel and Anna, and the other one that I can't remember her name at the moment. But the book is written from those 3 different women's perspectives. I wouldn't really call them all equally the main character. I would say Rachel is definitely the main character, but they are 3 different, very prominent characters who have their own chapters written from their own perspectives. So I think it applies. Question number 9 is Hemlock Grove. Name the last horror/thriller novel you read. I actually have never read a horror novel. It's something I've been wanting to do for a long time, but since I've never done it and I'm like so excited to finally read my first horror novel, I want it to be like the perfect book. The first one I read, I want it to be the perfect one. So I'm still trying to decide what I want to read for that. So if you have any suggestions below, please let me know. I'm thinking a Stephen King novel probably. I'd really like to read the book It, but I want to wait until after the movie comes out because I've already seen the old version of the movie and I've seen the first new one, so I want to just watch the second new one before I read it. But I'd really love to read a good horror novel that I haven't seen the movie of yet, so it's like fresh in my mind, because I think would just be an interesting experience to read a horror. I want to see how it differs reading a horror story versus watching one on TV, like how your feelings and the way fear affects you changes between the written word and visual. So anyway, I've never read a horror novel, so I don't have a great answer for that. But as far as like thriller kind of suspenseful mysteries, I'm just gonna say that the last one I read was One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus, I think. That's totally not a horror novel. I wouldn't even call it a thriller, but it's the closest thing I could think of. And finally, question number 10 is Nailed It. Name a book you read that felt just perfect. For this, I have to say The Chaos of Standing Still by Jessica Brody. That book was, I mean, it was exactly that. It felt just perfect. There was like absolutely nothing I didn't like about it. I liked every single aspect of the book. I liked all the characters. I thought they were all, not only like I liked them, but I thought they were all so well written and so well developed. I really loved the progression of, what's her name, Rin's character arc, going from the beginning stages of grief to learning how to handle that grief and being somewhat further along by the end of the story, but also still having such a long way to go. And I just felt like I've never really experienced the kind of grief and loss that Rin is going through in the book, but I felt like it was very, very well done in how it was portrayed and very realistic. A lot of her struggles and her vices and the way she handled or avoided the subjects that she didn't want to deal with, I think was very, very realistic. She had some elements of definitely anxiety and grief and loss, but also some elements of like OCD and needing control and that kind of springing up from the loss of her best friend. And I think that's super realistic and definitely something that happens. And I just thought it was really, really interesting to read. I love psychology, so it kind of blended a lot of those subjects with also just a really great fiction romance that was fun and kind of magical in the sense that it happened all within the span of like one day. On New Year's Eve, trapped in an airport in a snowstorm. It was very romantic, a very romantic setting that was sort of darkened by the cloud of her grief over the loss of her best friend. And I can't say enough good things about that book, honestly. If you haven't read The Chaos of Standing Still and you like YA, like romance, I mean, it is a romance, but there's much more to it than just that. I definitely go read it right now. That should be like your next thing on your TBR. I know some people who didn't like it, but I don't really understand how. I thought it was absolute perfection. And that is it for the Netflix Originals tag. Thank you again to the creator of this tag for all the awesome questions. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more from me in the future, subscribe below. I will leave all of the lovely people I'm planning to tag down below in the comments, so check that out. And of course, as usual, if I didn't tag you and you want to do this tag, please go for it anyway, because you can do whatever you want. It's your channel. And that's it. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye.